Journaling is 100% where you start. We get into these rhythms and things just become normal for us. It became normal for me to just say yes when I really wanted to say no, or to not speak up when I really wanted to. That became the norm, and it became the dynamic.
This is the Roller Coaster Podcast. We are here to help you be empowered and renew your sense of purpose as a midlife mom. This is your time to redefine and reclaim your power as a woman. Just because our kids are getting older doesn't mean that our lives still don't have crazy twists, turns, ups and downs. And that's not to mention what our hormones are doing. We're navigating helping our kids plan their next chapters while quietly wondering, what the heck does my next chapter look like? My name is Lucy Q, wife, mom, podcaster, and journaling mentor. This is a crazy time in your life, but you are not alone. So I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. Roller coaster. I wanna ride. Roller coaster. Life is like.
Welcome to the roller coaster. I'm your host, Lucy Q. Now, no doubt, by the time we hit our midlife years, the relationship that we've built with our partners can become a bit routine. Not that that's necessarily a problem, but it sometimes can be. Problems can definitely bubble up if you're not on the same page or when there seems to be a lot of distance between you. Joining me today is Elana Israel, who has combined her years as a therapist and coaching experience with her personal experiences within her own marriage to help women overcome their relationship challenges. Her program, Partnership Aligned, helps driven moms to become the badass that you are within your relationship. Welcome, Elana.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, on top of everything else that we're dealing with in midlife, we then have that layer of the relationship that we have with our partners.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're going to be chatting about how we can have our own backs in those relationships, because there's a lot of things that we do, as humans and as women that can kind of derail things a little bit. And creating that strong communication that we need to deepen our connections rather than, let them fizzle and fade away. Could you maybe start by sharing a bit about your midlife and your relationship with your partner?
Sure. So actually, my husband and I are no longer together. I went through a transformation while I was married to him in this area, and later chose to leave him for infidelity and other things that were just a no-go for me. But what was so interesting for me, and what really led me to be a relationship coach, is that while I was with him, I was able to catch myself being part of the problem. And if you had been in my marriage, or if you had been watching my marriage, you very much would have commiserated with me. My husband was an addict. He was relapsing left and right. We had a baby. It was a very chaotic situation. And you would have been just totally like Team Elana, right? And then I went and I got coached. And what that coach empowered me to do was to actually take a look at, where was I people pleasing? Where was I contributing? Where was I allowing things to happen that I wasn't okay with? Where was I not speaking up? And where was I not having my own back? And so while in that marriage, while I was trying to figure out what I was going to do about it, I went through this transformational process with my coach, where I decided to really release him of being in charge of my journey, and me taking responsibility for my actions, my words, and not taking responsibility for his, but just really owning my own truth. And that for me was life-changing. And he didn't change. He wasn't even part of the process, Yet my entire experience in the relationship changed because I changed me and the way that I vocalized and carried myself within that dynamic. And so it was so transformational for me that I actually left my career as a therapist and to become a relationship coach, because I was sitting in these therapy sessions that I was facilitating. And I was just like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I got to go do that other thing that just totally changed my life. Because if I can find peace in a marriage that was that chaotic, imagine what I could help women find peace in the midst of in their marriage, because most women are not going through that. But if I could get there through this method of coaching, like imagine what I could get people through when the issue is more, parenting differences or, not having enough date nights or whatever might be coming up. And also the deeper stuff, the people pleasing and the lack of communication and all of that. So I just got so excited about the prospect of doing that with people that I left my career as a therapist and went and got certified as a coach. And now I help women, moms primarily, really find their own footing and be on their own journey in the midst of their partnership. Because when you show up for you, when you're centered and aligned with you, then you show up as your authentic self and you give your partner the opportunity to love the real you. And there's no like dance, there's no game. It's a beautiful thing.
So you've mentioned people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share a little bit more about what that is and how that affects our relationships?
Yeah. So I'm going to keep it real with you. People pleasing is lying. It's just straight up dishonesty. Okay. It's not malicious lying. I understand that. I've been there. The intentions are not bad, but it's lying. If someone asks me how I feel about something, and because I have a fear of conflict, a fear of being judged or disapproved of, I tell them what they want to hear, I'm lying to them. I've essentially exited the relationship at that point in any authenticity. So I don't just see people pleasing as like wanting the other person to be happy. I see it as I am making a choice to not show up honestly in this relationship. And therefore, how can we have a real, deep, authentic connection if we're putting on a show?
Yeah, I can see your point. I'm just I'm pausing because it's sinking in what you're saying. I'm sort of looking at it from a different point of view. But then how does that translate from in your relationship, speaking your truth and communicating what you're really thinking and feeling? Because, we know that sometimes speaking our truth is going to create that conflict. And how do we manage ourselves through that?
Yeah, it's directly related because I think we have this idea that conflict is bad. But, says who, right? You can have conflict with someone and still remain respectful, right? Conflict means we disagree, right? Conflict means that maybe we're feeling hurt or defensive or something like that. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I mean, thinking back on, my marriage when it was really good for some years, and then other, healthy relationships that I had, I think some of the biggest moments, some of the biggest turnarounds were the moments after we had worked through a conflict. You feel like you're better and stronger because of it, like you're a team.
You come back together. You sort of, you start off at one point, you break apart because of conflict, but then it's that coming back together.
Yeah. And if we view conflict as bad, then we're always going to try and avoid it. But if avoiding conflict with you means that I have to tell you something that isn't true for me, now I'm having conflict within myself.
Right.
So either way, there's conflict. Let me choose the conflict that's honesty. Let me choose the conflict that's authenticity. And it's also amazing for self-growth and self-evolution, being able to, look at someone in the face and, lovingly and respectfully say, I actually don't agree with that, or actually don't feel that way, or I'm actually not okay, or just no. That, to be able to say that, to be able to match your insides and your outsides, brings this alignment, brings this inner peace to where no matter how the conversation goes, you feel good about it afterwards because you stood in your own truth.
So how do we, because I know I'm not the only one when I say this, where, where you have that, call it the fight, the argument in your own head
Yeah,
before you even utter a word.
totally.
So how do we get past that? Because, a lot of the times we create a problem before there isn't a problem, where we have something to say, but then we start thinking about what we're going to say. And then we think about what the other person is typically going to say based on previous conversations. So we have no idea that they're actually going to react that way. And we spiral. And then now we're mad at the person and they don't even know why.
Yeah.
And
It
like,
just
hands up, like women, we do this.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I have a mentor. We talk about shower resentments, which means like you're in the shower telling someone off and like you're alone in the shower, and it's like you're having like a whole conversation when you get out of the shower. You're like, I'm
And
so
you're like
mad,
rubbing
like
hair.
so mad at them. And like they're not even home, So we'll always be like, I got to call you out. You've got a shower resentment going,
It's a good one.
So if you're someone that people pleases on a regular basis, then my first suggestion would be to start with something that is small and not emotionally charged. So for someone I find two different kinds of people pleasers. I find there's a people pleaser that it's just chronic across the board with everyone and everything. And then there are people who are people pleasers in a specific relationship, but not necessarily in other ones. So if you identify with the first, if you're just kind of like people pleasing is my thing, no matter where I go or who I'm talking to, then start with something small and not emotionally charged. So the example I like to give is like, if you and your partner are doing the whole, like, what do you want to eat tonight? I don't know. What do you want to eat tonight? Like that whole thing, just say, I think I want to get the Chinese food, like something like that, which to some people might not seem like a big deal. But if you're used to always saying whatever you want, or I don't care, right? Like that's a big one, just to be able to say, actually, I'd like to go to this restaurant, or I'd like to cook this. It sounds small, but what happens is you start to build evidence that when you do speak up and say what it is that you want, that it's not this huge life or death situation.
I remember one of the darkest days of my life, the day I hit rock bottom. When I went searching for answers on how to get myself out of that dark place, I discovered journaling. But when I tried to put pen to paper, I didn't know where to start. I had no guide or method to help me express what I was feeling. The only thing that I had was the blank page of my journal staring back at me. It took me years to figure out the proper journaling method so that I could understand who I was, what I wanted, how I thought, and how I felt. That is why I've taken everything that I've learned and turned it into a guide that will not only help you start your journaling journey, but will also help you start each day with purpose and gratitude. This guide is filled with growth tools, personal resources, and guided journal entries that will help you understand who you are, what you want, what you're thinking, and what you're feeling. You can find your journaling journey, your guide to starting each day with purpose and gratitude, on Amazon, and check out the show notes for links. Order your journaling journey today and discover your true self.
Because your brain, I know you've had a lot of experts on the show, so I'm sure someone has said this before, but your primal brain doesn't know the difference between, physical danger and emotional danger. So when you are anticipating, in the shower or wherever you're doing it, if you're anticipating that someone's going to be mad at you, your brain doesn't realize that that's not physical danger, right? Your brain thinks like this is like a life or death fight or flight situation, which is why it becomes visceral. You can feel it in your body, right? Now, if you're the latter, if like I had a very hard time identifying with people pleasing because I wasn't a people pleaser across the board. It took a lot of work for me to be able to really see it and identify it within my marriage because it wasn't something I was doing everywhere. But in my marriage, I absolutely was. And once I was able to name it, you know, they say name it to tame it. Once I was able to name it and say what it was, I was able to take a look at it. And so in those situations where it is particular to a specific relationship, like with your partner, I would say journaling is where you start. And I know that you're big on journaling. Journaling is 100% where you start. We get into these rhythms and things just become normal for us. It became normal for me to just say yes when I really wanted to say no, or to not speak up when I really wanted to. That became the norm and it became the dynamic. And so it started to become my role. And so starting to journal about what was really going on for me underneath, what is my fear? If I was to speak up, if I was to say that thing, if I was to say no to something in the bedroom that I was saying yes to that I didn't want to, like all of these things that really come up behind closed doors in a marriage, what is the fear? What might happen? And when I started to write it out and look at it in black and white, it just wasn't as scary as it was in my head. And I was able to start differentiating between like the actual circumstance and my thoughts about it. So that's the first step.
Yeah, journaling by far has been one of my most powerful tools that have helped me navigate certain relationships that I've had and then allow for that space of growth. I've only been journaling for 5 years, and 5 years ago, you know, when I first tried, and I tried journaling before then and it didn't work. I couldn't figure it out. I found my way. I created my own process, and it has really allowed me to see things differently and allow for that growth. And in some ways, journaling can be nothing more than what I call vomiting on a page.
Totally.
You're just getting all of that shit out of your head. And
Mm-hmm.
once you get it out, it calms you down, and it almost like unlocks something in your subconscious, and you just kind of get hints and you touch on a different way of looking at things. And it may only be small at the beginning, but it's like any sort of, you know, muscle growth that you have. It's a little bit at the beginning, but over time it grows really strong and you become really good at figuring out your own stuff.
Yeah, there is magic in pen and paper.
Yeah,
100%.
pen and paper, not, you know, I know
Not
some people talk
typing. I
about
know.
typing, and I'm like, no, 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 that affects a whole different part of the brain. You
Yeah.
actually have to
Yeah.
old school it. I mean, let's face it, moms, we're old school. If you're afraid
Amish
of,
style.
yeah, if you're afraid of anyone reading your diary, all I say is write in cursive. Most
I
people
know.
can't read it
I know. I
anymore.
just found out that my kid won't learn how to write in cursive in school. I was like, what is that?
I know. So it's like, oh, moms have the secret code we can write in. So, and I
So
mean,
good.
you know, you can even tear it up, you can burn it, you can hide it. There's different things that you can do, but it unlocks something different. And
Yeah.
we could probably talk for hours on its benefits, but I know there's so many other things that we want to touch on. I want to go back to something that you had mentioned when you were talking about the relationship that you were in previously with your husband. And it was something about, I can't remember exactly words, but it was owning about what you were saying and letting them own what they were saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is where we get into the topic of emotional detachment with love. Detaching with love means I'm going to give you the dignity of having your own journey and feeling the consequences for, you know, bad decisions and feeling the benefits of good decisions and just really being able to own your own shit. And I am going to be over here on my side of the street, really working on my own shit. And I like to visualize it as like two partners on their own side of the street, but close enough to be able to like hold hands. Like that's the visual that I like. I think that taking any kind of emotional responsibility for somebody else's words or actions is detrimental to my own mental health because I cannot control their words or actions. So I don't want to take responsibility for something I can't control. Number one, because it makes no sense and it's kind of a dead end. But more importantly, because I have a very limited amount of energy, right? We have a finite amount of energy. And if I am spending some of that precious energy trying to, I don't know, entangle myself in your stuff, I don't have enough energy left over to be on my side of the street, working on my behaviors, working on my thoughts, working on my feelings. I see it almost as a distraction and it doesn't go anywhere. And if I continue to take responsibility for your stuff, you're going to continue to expect me to. And round we go.
And that's something that a lot of us do as mothers.
Definitely.
And it's, I think, one of the hardest things to do, especially now. Our kids are, well, they're almost 21 and 24. So they're adults. And, you see them struggling and trying to find their own way and make their own mark on the world. And you still want to scoop them up like they're that little 4-year-old and put your arms around them and tell them everything's going to be okay. But that would be a disservice to our children.
Right.
Because they are here to experience their own journey. And it can be incredibly hard to stand back and allow that experience to unfold, let that journey happen.
Yeah.
But it can also be rewarding when we see that they've done something for themselves. The same way that, we try and teach our kids how to walk, but ultimately they have to figure that out for themselves. And that, when they do figure it out, the look on their face and the look on your face, it's keeping that thought alive in who we are and allowing that journey to unfold. It's still the same way with our partners, because they're also here for their own journey, and they have to learn and they have to grow and they have to make their own choices, good, bad, or ugly. They have to make their own choices, and we have to allow them the space to do that. And either situation can be really hard.
Yeah.
Really hard.
Yeah. I think what's really helped me in that situation is to remember that if I shield you from pain, I shield you from the growth, because growth comes from pain, right? Pain is the admission price to self-evolution. And I can't have both ways.
Yeah.
And it is really, really hard. And I have a younger child. My son is 3.5. And, unfortunately, his dad is just not well and not able to be in his life. And I have had to get so much coaching about how will I handle those conversations, with my son about his father. And one of the things that was said to me that really created a shift in me was, if you try and shield him from the pain and the grief process that he inevitably will have here, you will shield him from all the growth and the strength that he will gain from getting through it. And how can you remain an approachable, loving mother, as opposed to a feared up mother who might make him think that his emotions are scary because they're scaring you? And it was like life-changing for me.
Yeah.
So just this idea of shielding them from pain means shielding them from growth. And it is the same with a partner. It is the same with an adult. Of course, the emotions are different. Nothing's like your child, right? Of course. But it's still this person outside of you that you love, that, does some great things, does some shitty things. You want to control all of it because you're human, right? But you also want them to grow and have and let them have their own journey. And it's like, you just can't have it both ways.
No, one of the famous lines I say to our kids all the time is, you can be right or you can be happy. You got to pick one.
Exactly.
You got to pick one.
And I like to change that to, you can be right or you can have inner peace.
Yeah.
For me, that resonates so much more.
Yeah, that does. That makes it takes, because you can always find happiness, and it's not necessarily, but
Right.
inner peace. Yeah, that works. I like that. That works better. I'm going to
Yeah.
start using that.
Go for it.
Now, as we wrap up today, Elana, could you maybe share some final words of wisdom with us?
Yeah. I think my final words of wisdom would be to embrace fear and conflict as part of your human experience and as part of your experience within your partnership. If we just shifted our perspective from this is bad, this is something to avoid, to this is growth, this is something to help us connect and get to know each other better, all of a sudden it changes. And I think that shift, which is something that I help my clients do, is like the catalyst for saying, okay, I am going to work on this and start to show up more honestly and more authentically because I don't need to be so afraid of the big bad C word. Like, it's okay if we go there because we can go there together and we can come out of it together. When I avoid it, when I people please, we're kind of in separate areas, but we can have conflict together and come out of it together. And I think that mindset shift of we are on the same team, even when we don't agree, I think that makes all the difference.
I'm going to remember that one. Now, you have a podcast too, don't you?
I do. My podcast is called Partnership Aligned. And some of them are really short 10-minute episodes where I go solo, and some of them are interviews. And it's basically geared towards, the woman who wants to have a deeper connection with her partner and understands that inner work is the way to get there. And she wants to learn how.
Perfect. To connect with Elana and to find out where you can catch her podcast, make sure you check out the show notes. I'm going to have all the links in there. And remember, if you're feeling lost, stuck, and confused in midlife, make sure you grab a copy of my guided journal, Your Journaling Journey. It is packed with tools to help you find clarity, guided prompts, affirmations, and gratitude. You can get your copy of Your Journaling Journey on Amazon today. And thank you to all of my listeners. And Elana, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Life is like a roller coaster, baby.